Hello and welcome, everyone. We're going to get started momentarily. We want to give folks a couple minutes to have the opportunity to log in. And so if you could be patient with us, we're going to wait until about 12:03 Pacific time to get started. As a reminder, please keep yourself muted throughout this discussion until we go into the breakout rooms. And we're looking forward to this lively chat. And this conversation will be recorded.
Hi, everyone. This is Decca from Austin.
Hi, Decca. If you can mute yourself for the duration of the panel, we'll have an opportunity for folks to check in when we're going to breakout rooms. As a reminder to everyone, please keep yourself on mute until the 1 o'clock hour when we're going to breakout rooms, which is 58 minutes from now, depending on what time zone you're in. And with that, we'll get started. I want to welcome you to the third annual Non-Traditionally Trained Engineers in Tech Panel Discussion and Hiring Fair. I'm your host and moderator, Marco Lindsay, and I'm a member of the Bay Area chapter of the 100 Black Men of America. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'll ask them a set of preset questions. And about the 40 to 45 minute mark, we'll begin to pull questions that you put in the chat box. Then at the hour, we'll go into breakout rooms so that you all can network and speak to the representatives from these companies. Company reps, please make sure that your screen name shows which organization you are a part of, and we encourage you to answer questions from career seekers in the chat box. Career seekers, I encourage you to put your LinkedIn profiles in the chat box, connect with one another, as well as our speakers and representatives, and feel free to type your questions in the chat box as they come up. As a reminder, please keep your audio muted until we go out go into the breakout rooms. And with that, we'll begin the conversation. And I'll begin to introduce our illustrious panelists. First off, I'll lead with Alex Hardy. Alex Hardy is a software engineer at LinkedIn on the InfoSec risk engineering team. He moved to California in 2013, seeking opportunities that were not available to him in his home country of Sierra Leone. Not knowing anyone in California besides his host friend from elementary school and only $100 to his name, Alex had to quickly find a way to make ends meet and support himself. He was able to find a job at a warehouse within 2 months of his arrival, and he got promoted to warehouse manager after his first year working there. He grew his team from about 8 to 50 people, shipping about 3,000 packages a day. While his career trajectory was looking promising in the logistics industry, Alex had a burning desire to be a software engineer, but had to drop out of his computer science courses in community college because he could not see the instructor's board as he is monovisioned and legally blind. This forced him into the do-it-yourself route, where he started by doing CS50 Intro to Computer Science course offered by Harvard Online. Finishing this course gave him some basic knowledge of computer science and a lot of confidence that he could actually become a software engineer. He further honed his skills by working on ambitious personal projects with the end goal of turning at least one into a successful startup. One evening, while scrolling through Twitter, he saw a post by the Cape Horn Center in Oakland advertising application days for the REACH program at LinkedIn. He applied to it and was fortunate to be hired on as one of the apprentice engineers in June of 2019. Today, Alex's day-to-day includes developing and maintaining the defense infrastructure of LinkedIn and working on tooling for various trust and safety teams. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Vincent Moore, or Vince Moore. Vince is an aspiring nomad, currently works as a software engineer at Chime, where he helps drive user growth and product adoption. Previously, he worked with a handful of e-commerce and finance companies while at Accenture before taking on an R&D role at Eventbrite, where he developed his products for event creators and attendees. In his free time, he enjoys experimenting with cocktails, maximizing credit card rewards, and planning for his next trip. Welcome, Vince. Next up, we have Gary Lovely. Gary Lovely is a software engineering manager at ServiceNow. He's always been motivated to bridge the gap between his design background and software engineering skills to help solve difficult problems. By combining UX design and research with his engineering expertise into a single discipline, he has spent his career developing and testing innovative solutions within products. This has allowed him to ensure that he is always focused on delivering quality outcomes for both his customers and the business. Gary has expertise in a variety of tech stacks such as React, Angular 6+, TypeScript, WordPress, JavaScript, and Java. Gary worked as a web developer for Benefit Cosmetics, Genwe Inc., TaylorMade Golf, Auto Products, Viasat Inc., and during his time at Viasat, he began his career in engineering management before joining ServiceNow 5 months ago. Gary's experience with delivering business outcomes has helped him with seeing the bigger picture and seamlessly transitioning into management. He has been able to develop high-performing teams by highlighting the strengths of his colleagues and empowering his engineers to have a voice at the table. Gary has partnered with a wide variety of stakeholders across many different industries, which has helped him adapt to any team within any industry. His athletic background playing collegiate football at Brigham Young University, his calm demeanor helped him to be a team player as well as a leader. Welcome, Gary. Last but certainly not least, we have Louis Barrett. Louis is a self-taught information security engineer living in the San Francisco Bay Area. Over the past 15 years, he's held positions in IT, networking, and software engineering across various industries. This experience paired with his natural tenacity allowed him to navigate an industry notorious for gatekeeping and emerge as one of its top performers. While he isn't foiling hacker scheme, he likes to spend his time hiking, playing music, and traveling with his growing family. I want to welcome you, Louis, and welcome all of you to this panel discussion. And I'd like to start the conversation off with a simple question of, how did you get into tech? And I'll just throw it out there. Since I said you last, Louis, you go first.
Thank you, Marcus.
Tell us about your journey into tech. Yep.
Good to be meeting everyone today. Thanks for having me. So just to give you a bit of background on myself, I originally came to this country from Jamaica back in the 90s and arrived in an inner city in America where there wasn't much opportunity in the way of technical education for young men. But luckily enough for me, there was a program that was opened a few years later called Computer Genesis. And the idea behind this was to basically give inner city kids A, vocational training, and then B, computer training. So I went the computer training route, and for $25, they basically have you run through a whole program where you built a computer, you install the operating system, you really got to know how this stuff worked. Kind of like, bouncing off of that, I went back the following year as an instructor, like only around like 9 or 10 years old, and started basically getting really involved in computing, really interested. And, a few years after that, got my first IT job at a place called Circuit City. This is kind of dating myself now, but it's similar to your Best Buy Geek Squad type of setup. And this organization had a system by which any employee who was, working in that computer service department could get certification vouchers. So these are things that you can use to, kind of solidify your experience by showing that you can, complete certain tasks. Now, the system they had in place only let you take 2 vouchers, provide you 2 vouchers. But in my hacker mindset, I found a way to get 6 vouchers out of the system, took all 6 tests, passed those 6 tests, and got into my first real tech job, which is like a help desk support job. Eventually went through the various roles within that organization, touched basically everything from, again, networking to software development to help desk, and eventually security, where I really found that as my best fit today. So I've been working at Segment now for the past 3 years. We're recently acquired by Twilio. I've been at Twilio since May of 2021. Good to meet you all.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it over to Gary. Thank you.
So Gary Lovely, and my journey has been a little bit all over the place in terms of getting into the tech industry. Now, growing up in the Bay Area in San Jose, you would think because technology is everywhere, you have everything at your fingertips. But it wasn't that case growing up. No one that I knew was actually in the tech industry. It was more in terms of manual labor or in more retail type spaces, which nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't give you the advantages of advancing your computer skills. And when I went off to college, I was fortunate to get a scholarship to play football at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Now, getting a degree in graphic design was great, but there was something where I wanted to take it a step further, bring those designs to life. And engineering was something that was near and dear to my heart from the days of floppy disks, which a lot of people they know something about. Some might not know about floppy disks, and SimCity. And having that exposure as a kid, I've always wanted to get into engineering. So upon graduating from BYU, came back to the Bay Area, went to the Art Institute in San Francisco, which gave me a leverage of being engulfed in not only the tech industry in terms of being able to network, but a variety of individuals that all migrated into San Francisco to have that type of environment where everyone is constantly go, 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 ideas coming from everywhere. That continued to inspire me to do internships, collaborate with people in other areas at the Art Institute. And upon graduating, one of the big things that I noticed in 2009, as you know, there was the recession. How do you get into the industry? There was a big step of networking. Networking is huge in terms of understanding who to talk to, the relationships you build in order to further your career, because it's a lot about what you know, but it's also about who you know in terms of being able to progress yourself in your career. And with my continuous learning plus the networking, I tied myself into the creative group, which was based in San Francisco, which allowed me to break into the industry at Benefit Cosmetics. And did I know anything about makeup? No, nothing. But what I would tell everyone is, upon that journey, not being afraid to go into an industry you know nothing about is very important in terms of not limiting yourself to the opportunities that are out there. And there's nothing in terms of lucky that I perceive. I think it's when your preparation meets opportunity allows you to break into the career that you want and then further your career. And now that I'm in San Diego, I've been able to hone my skills on the leadership side, work myself into management while at Viasat, and then being at ServiceNow for the last 6 months has put me in a position on the compliance, security, and persistence side in order to keep our systems up and running while further building relationships within our team and platform to further it. And I will pass it over to Alex, and thanks for your time.
Hey everyone, Alex here. And my journey into tech, it's quite interesting. So growing up in Sierra Leone, West Africa, as you'd imagine, there's no tech industry there. But I always had this interest in computers. I was the one child in the family that everybody brings their tech problems to, or their IT problems, fix my printer or make something work. And even though there were very limited computers, I used to give lunch money to my computer science teacher in high school to let me go sit in the computer lab during lunch and stuff like that. And moving to the US, I was fortunate to know a friend that lived in the Bay Area in Oakland that I hadn't seen for like 10, 15 years. And when I moved here, I stayed with him for a bit because like Marco mentioned in my bio, I didn't really have anything or know anybody here. I just had $100 on me and I had to find a job. So it was while working at this job at a startup warehouse in South San Francisco, I learned of the story of the founder. He was a security guard in Michigan and moved to the Bay Area. But while he was being a security guard, he spent his nights learning how to code, teaching himself HTML, CSS, and all, and Python. And so he started this company out of nothing. And before long, 3 or 4 years later, he was pulling in like $1 million a year, doing shipping for various small businesses and some medium-sized companies. So with my interest for computer science kind of waning at that point because I wasn't really able to do it in community college because I couldn't see the board because I'm legally blind. I just decided with that motivation that I got from history to try and do it myself because I see an example of somebody doing it successfully. That's why I really like the saying that they can become what they see. So me saying that really pushed me over the edge, and I started taking computer science online classes, starting with CS50, and then went on to, after completing that, wanting to start my own startup, just like I've seen before. But while just scrolling on Twitter one night, I saw the post by the K-Power Center advertising the LinkedIn Reach program, which is something that's geared towards people that are non-traditionally trained and to get into tech, give them an apprenticeship and have them work for a couple of years and then move them up the ladder. I applied, I just did it because I was like, oh, what if? And luckily I was chosen to be one of the apprentices in 2019. I started, and ever since I've been on the information security team, working mostly on tooling for the InfoSec side and also the trust engineering, for trust engineering side, working on things like investigation tools, and on the security side, working on defense infrastructure, like automating sections and different things that are security related within the whole LinkedIn organization. And thanks for having me. I'll throw it over to Vince.
Awesome, cool. Thanks everyone for having me. My journey to tech really started with an innate interest in just building things and tinkering with things, dating all the way back to the days where I'd tinker around in Photoshop Illustrator to create crazy designs and put them on my my MySpace. But sort of after that, I started to create websites for myself. You know, sort of started to slowly learn HTML, CSS, and then sort of that evolved into, after college, a career in sort of building websites professionally for like Fortune 500 companies, and then sort of made the quintessential jump to the Bay Area in 2018 and worked for Eventbrite for a couple of years, building out product offerings for event creators and organizers, and sort of a couple of years ago made the switch to Chime, where now I'm doing more service-oriented design architecture. But the common thread through all of that is sort of just an interest in sort of building things, breaking things, getting things into the hands of consumers at the end of the day.
Thank you all. 100 Black men models is what they see is what they'll be. And that's why we think it's important for to hear people's stories, because what we understand and know is that people outside of the tech sector think there's one path to get there, right? And one of the things that we want to outline and highlight are gentlemen like these, and there are thousands of others who take different paths, but they also get to some great places. And we want to encourage you all, if you're on that path or you're thinking about getting that path, we have people here who've done it. We have people here who are doing it. And I want to encourage you to reach out and connect with them and connect with other folks on the call. With that in mind, I want to ask our panelists, and you all can feel free to answer this as you see fit. What career opportunities are there available for non-traditional career seekers that are interested in tech?
I'll take this one first. So the REACH program at LinkedIn gives traditionally trained engineers a lot of opportunities to go into paths like UI, backend, mobile, Android or iOS, artificial intelligence, data science, and also technical program managers. So with the REACH program, you get to work on an actual team and do actual real work. And you work for like 32 hours a week, and you have 8 hours a week to learn and expand your knowledge as you see fit. So it's like those are the opportunities. Like as I've just listed, they're kind of expansive and you can pretty much do anything you want, at least from the LinkedIn side.
At ServiceNow, we have some of our new grad hire programs, but then we also have programs for non-traditional, I'd say engineering side, or people that are interested in terms of learning more technologies that could actually move you from one space to another. We're very interested, especially on our diversity, inclusion, belonging department, in terms of getting more people from different backgrounds so that we're not monolithic in terms of the type of engineers we're bringing in to the company. We want people from different backgrounds in terms of, you know, if you have an art history background, but then you found your way into engineering, that's a totally different space that and mindset that can not only contribute to the company as a whole, but enrich it at the same time.
I think I can probably answer this in two parts. First, on like industries that I think are really growing and have a good path for people who are not traditionally trained. Both Alex and myself are in InfoSec. This is a growing area. It's continuing to grow. There continues to be a skills gap. And this is one of the areas where diversity in thinking and mindset really comes to the forefront, because we all as humans face different challenges throughout life, and bringing some of that perspective into an InfoSec role tends to be pretty helpful for teams to basically build better protections and response plans based on people's lived experience. So that's definitely an area I encourage people to look into, which is InfoSec. And the second part of that is what you should do to make those opportunities manifest for yourself. So I mentioned certifications earlier. I'm big on this. I think it's really important to show your experience somehow. If you don't have like that lived work experience that you can show on your resume, I've been somewhere 5 years, 6 years, you can show that you at least have the capability to do the work they're looking for. So that's a good step in the right direction. Another thing you can look at is the Year Up program. And that's for folks that aren't in college. Like I didn't go to college myself, I had to drop out. My folks had no money. I was encouraged to be a plumber, but didn't take that route. Things like a Year Up, on the other hand, if you're interested and you're self-motivated and you join Year Up, they basically train you on an industry's required skills, and they'll connect you with these companies to make that a reality for you. So yeah, definitely look into InfoSec roles, because again, growing industry, and then certifications in Year Up is my other advice in that area.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add, I think in addition to programs that are tailored towards people that don't have traditional engineering experience, in the software engineering sort of industry as a whole is ripe with opportunity. You just have to sort of, if you're interested in these types of roles, do a bit of legwork, a bit of prep work to put yourself in a position where you might be able to land one of these roles even without experience. Some of the things that Louis mentioned earlier, side projects, freelancing, some of the tailored programs again might help you to get some of the experience that organizations are looking for when they're looking for engineers. Because I think one of the barriers to sort of getting an engineering position at these companies is really the experience, the resume screen. If you don't have something to show for the things that you've learned, then it's easy for recruiters to sort of pass by. But if you are doing things to show that you're applying the things that you're learning on the side, via side projects, open source contributions, that'll sort of help you to get your foot in the door.
You hit it on something there in regards to the interview process, or the interview. What does that look like? What does the interview process look like for people coming into the roles that you're interested in?
Well, I can probably kick that one off. At least at Twilio, we have a kind of a 4 or 5 phase process. It starts with a resume screen. This is something that's fairly automated, and it's something I want folks to realize that the first touch point of a lot of these applications isn't exactly a person, but that's just to help us kind of filter down the number of applications we receive. So understanding what keywords a lot of these resumes or a lot of these positions require to get to that first level of filter is really important. So a way you can kind of figure that out is to look at what people are saying about what they're doing and existing roles for the thing you're looking to do, right? So kind of reverse engineer that resume and say, hey, this person has these skills checked off. How can I get those skills or have those skills show in my resume somehow? So I'll bubble up to that second level. And after that, that's where you actually get a human coming in and reading through the requirement to see where you fit within the organization and finally reaching out to like kick off the interview process. So you were to get through that first phase. Then there are, a series of what used to be on-sites before everything became fully remote, but those go across like, hey, do you have the values the organization is looking for? Do you have the technical competencies? And will you work together with the folks who are on your adjacent teams as well as folks who are your stakeholders, right? And kind of see what the cultural fit is like before finally making a decision. And I think that's pretty standard for most Bay Area companies. It might be different throughout the nation. So I'll let someone else chime in on kind of their experience there.
So I can add to that. So I've seen that as the first like 2 to 3 phases, and then you get into the technical side of things where you have the code reviews. And the coding exercises are really a huge gauge in understanding not only do you understand the technical side, the programming languages, but also can you speak towards your work? Walk me through your process, because everyone has their own personal way of walking through problems, solving problems, because what you do not only in technology, but in the industry on the planet, you solve problems. And how you solve those problems will help the interviewer understand how can you fit within this team. And when you walk that person through those ins and outs of my thinking, my mindset around this in terms to solve this problem in the most efficient way, are these steps X, Y, Z, that further lets the interviewer know that this person knows their stuff, knows multiple ways to solve it, and they know my business and how we could actually utilize them and hit the ground running.
And also to add one point, everything everybody has said is pretty much the same with LinkedIn, but I would just like to note that, to add that the industry, a lot of teams are moving towards the non-algorithmic questions. So I'll advise people to try to know what kind of questions the team is going to ask, because most teams are trying to ask you questions on things that you'll actually work on the day-to-day and not to like invert a binary tree. So when you have like one of your phone screenings with maybe your manager or something before the technical interview, make sure to ask them what do their questions look like. Don't be shy to do that, because it will help you to have a better mindset and prepare better.
Yeah, +1. I think knowing what types of questions the interview panel will ask going in is super helpful. I know at Chime, we tend to tell folks exactly what to expect during the interview process. And we, like most others in the industry, are sort of trending towards non-algorithmic questions. That said, I think depending on where you're looking to land, brushing up on algorithm questions, the leak codes, the HackerRanks of the world, I don't think it hurts. Those kinds of questions hit at the core of computer science. I know that I don't use that stuff day to day at all, but some companies still are for sure asking those types of questions. So it can't hurt, but yeah, I think going in, asking and knowing what to expect. And then at Chime, similarly, you do sort of a recruiter screen, technical phone screen, and then straight to a panel, including technical questions and some behavioral sessions as well.
And last note, be confident. Be confident when you go into an interview, because it will show.
Absolutely. And so I want to add one thing there actually about the algorithm questions. And the reason a lot of us in the tech industry have stopped doing this, since I also act as a hiring manager for a few roles, it tends to be a bit gatekeepy in the sense that a lot of these algorithms are taught specifically at your top schools, your MITs, your Berkeleys and all that. So what ends up happening is you exclude an entire swath of the population who wouldn't be exposed to that, but still has the capability to do the work and solve these problems if they knew what question they were actually answering. So I personally use that as a measuring stick to see where a company's head is at when I'm, talking to them about my next steps.
Love it. Love it. I put it in the chat, but just take notes. You're getting some gems here. Some people that's been through the process successfully, and they're giving you the keys to the kingdom. Here's a question for you all. You all are some wonderful organizations. It's I think some great cultures. What are your organizations looking for in new hires? We got folks on the call that want to work where you are. What are your companies looking for? What do you think? And what's been your experience with that?
Well, I know at ServiceNow, we're looking for individuals that are those supreme problem solvers, those that can think outside the box, that aren't afraid to ask what people deem the dumb questions. Be yourself, be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And we're looking for individuals that are self-starters, that are willing to do that continuous learning, because I know for myself, I know I didn't have all the answers, and I still don't have all the answers to questions, but I'm willing to go out, ask those questions, reach out to people, collaborate, network, and grow within myself. And that's what we're always looking for. And, your GitHub with projects, as a number of the panelists mentioned, are key in terms of seeing the variety of things you're willing to expose yourself to.
It's basically the same for a lot of the stuff we're doing out here, as Gary mentioned here. Like, definitely motivate, definitely a self-starter. I want to touch on, I believe, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Deka's question in the chat was, all panelists are men. I'm a woman who's interested in leadership and tech, and I find that men are hired and promoted based on potential, whilst women are expected, at least to my experience, to tick every box. How can a woman get ahead, climb the ladder in networking, and how can females catch a break? So one thing I want to kind of point out here, I mentioned this earlier, at least within security right now, diversity of thought, diversity of teams is so important, because we all see threats differently, and bringing that different lens to our work daily really helps up-level the team, since there'll be gaps that I have as a man that a woman would catch or a non-English speaker would catch. For example, like in the previous iteration of my team, we had a guy who was from Persia, right? And we're doing threat intelligence and threat hunting, looking for signs of badness in data. And because he speaks Farsi and he could see the way something was written and that there was an issue with this, it was a flag that I would have missed completely. So it's like one of the examples of I just bringing in different folks up levels companies. And this is something that at least at Twilio and Segment, we're really focusing on. My team, for example, is all women. I'm the only man on that team in my operational team. So it really depends on the company you're looking for and what their goals are. I can't say it's the catch-all for everyone, but it really depends on the company culture and what their priorities are. So that's really what you have to look for.
And so piggyback off that, everything applied that both men have said applies to LinkedIn. And they're also really big on culture. So it's like LinkedIn really looks for people with unique experiences and how they can apply those unique experiences to help solve problems within the company. Just like Louis mentioned, it's like your unique perspective can help you spot things that other people might just totally miss. And if anybody is interested in the REACH program, I encourage you to really draw from your past and try to connect it into how you think your past will be able to help you to be a better engineer at LinkedIn, because that's the number one thing they look for in the applications. And highlighting that in an effective way will really push you to the front of the line.
Yeah, I can add a couple notes on what Chime typically looks for in new hires. I think first and foremost is probably folks that have that are flexible and have a growth mindset. Chime is growing incredibly fast. I think I joined around 200. We're now over 1,000. That's over the course of the past year or so. And so being able to jump in, be flexible with the constant changes that are bound to happen as we're continuing to grow. That's super important. Also, some one that's sort of in line with our values. You know, we're trying to create financial peace of mind for everyone, regardless of your economic background. And so being sort of passionate not only about the overarching mission, but also about all of our values is also super important. And then collaborators, you know, now that we have so many people working in so many functional areas all across the US, being able to collaborate amongst not only the people on your team, but again, cross-functional areas and other teams, super important for us.
Here's another question, and it could be a quick one, could be long, just depending on how you think about it. But given your roles, given how you got into the industry, and most of you came from outside of the industry, what are some things or one thing that you wish you had known when you first started off in tech?
You know what? When it comes to that question, I guess there are two parts of it for me, right? What I would have known about the skills requirements, and then what I would have known about the business side of it. So I'll talk about the skills first. Going into a lot of these tech companies, we can be pretty intimidated, you know, not really know how we stack up against our so-called competition. But a lot of that comes back down to, you know, building confidence in your skills, like Yuri mentioned earlier, and being confident going into this interview, right? So I wish they told me that, you know, there are various levels across the tech industry. You're going to have people who are at your level. You're going to have people who are above and below your level. And that shouldn't be something that weighs you down when you get into one of these companies, right? You should understand that there is a gradient of skill, and that the companies understand that, and that you have a place there, more so than say, hey, I'm competing with the person next to me. I have to work, you know, 4 times as hard because so-and-so just got promoted. Just know that there is that spectrum of talent across these companies, and there is a place, I would say, for everyone. The second part of it is more financial, right? There's a lot of things we don't talk about within the tech industry, and it's like how compensation is structured. And understanding how compensation is structured is a big part to your happiness in a lot of these organizations, right? So they typically have a breakdown between cash compensation and then equity-based compensation if your company is public. If your company is not public and you're working as a startup, then you might have ISO-based compensation, or like shares when your company eventually becomes public. So understanding what mix of the two makes you most comfortable is something you should discuss up front, because it's really difficult to change this further down the line. I'll pass over to whoever has comments on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing that I wish I knew jumping in was sort of just knowing my worth, both at the time that you join the company and then as you're sort of adding value to the company. At the time you're joining, there are a ton of resources that will sort of show you the average compensation, including, you know, equity, as Louis mentioned, and base comp. And also, as he mentioned, it's really important to get that figure right, because when it comes time to be recognized for your contributions to the organization, you know, a 10% raise on, you know, half of what you should have been making is not quite as nice as 10% raise on what you should have been making. So just making sure that you're going in with as much information as possible, whether it be ladders, whether it be levels, just have as much information as you can going in, and then having a fuller understanding of equity types, options, RSUs, top implications of all of that would have been super helpful going in for me. And also competing offers, get as many as you can, because that will just provide you more leverage as you're going through the process.
Yes, and also just a quick addition. Speak up if you have things on your mind, something that's bothering you. Make sure you speak to your manager and let them know what you're thinking, because you have, as a non-traditionally trained person, when you come into a company, you have a tendency to feel like, oh, they're doing me a favor. Look at what you've done for me. My life, I couldn't have imagined this. Like, so that will make you tend to suppress things that you're feeling. Make sure you always engage your manager and speak up and let them know what's on your mind. It might change things for you. It's like I'm talking from experience here. So.
Yeah, I would have to say, ask for what you want, know what your values are. And if you're not willing to compromise on those, make the decision not to either join that company or continue with that company, but know what those values are and what you want. And companies intentionally do not tell you about equity, RSUs, ESPP. They make it so difficult for you to actually understand how they work and how to research them. And it's intentional so that, as you go through the process, you kind of figure it out along the way. But you have to advocate for yourself. If you're not your best advocate, you will end up getting the short end of the stick. So being able to speak up, because if you go through that process of, let's say, 7 rounds of interviews, they obviously want you and they make an offer. And the big thing that I've learned across the way is negotiate. Everything is negotiable. Anything on the table is negotiable. And the worst thing they could say is, no, we can't give you this, but we'll give you this instead. And that ultimately, as everyone mentioned, increases the compensation package. And for me, what I've really harnessed as an engineering manager is a lot of people, especially during our pandemic, is wellness. Being able to offer wellness for individuals, time off if they need it, be with family, that's invaluable. You don't get time back. You can always make money, but you will never get time back.
This is some good stuff. Thank you. Thank you all. We appreciate you sharing your experiences. Now, let's flip the script a bit. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What's the most difficult part of being in tech from your vantage points?
I mean, this is like a thing that's difficult, but also exciting for me, is the speed of change within the industry. So, every year you have new stacks, new tools, new processes coming out, and staying on top of those is both a challenge, but also keeps the industry fresh for the most part, in that you're not working with the same stale old thing year after year and getting bored. So even though it is something that is a challenge, it's also one that I look forward to each day. So, that's what I'll throw in for that one there.
I would have to piggyback off of that. And you might be at a company where, as you're continuously learning, your company might not see those same values. So it puts you in a hard spot. Should I stay at this company, or should I leave to another company that actually has those new technologies that are rolling out? And it might be something where you're always chasing the latest and greatest, but it's only going to make you more of a desirable hire going forward.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I also think, especially when you're working with big or medium-sized companies, you have a lot of collaboration with different teams, and getting somebody to do something for you can be challenging, especially if, say, they have their own deadlines to meet. So that's something you have to look out for. It's like when you're working on your own, you can pump out projects really fast, but if you're working in a big company, your work depends on somebody else doing stuff or approving what you want to do. So that can be really frustrating and challenging at times.
Yeah, and for me, in the past, most difficult thing for me was probably like finding a voice, especially within large teams, large companies, where you're kind of, you might be seen as a cog in the larger machine, but really finding a voice, being known for something, and being recognized for the contributions that you make is key, but can be difficult. So I think my advice there would be to find a niche, make sure that you're sort of delivering not only what you say that you will, but also try to integrate your own interests, your own opinions, and being known for something outside of delivery and shipping things.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. And I ask a couple more questions, then I'll start pulling them out the chat. I see there's some in there. If you have a question, please add it to the chat box and we can get to it. But we got folks on this call that are interested in getting a role in tech. We got some folks that are in tech and they want to progress. They want to be successful as you all have been. And so what advice would you give to the folks on this Zoom on how they could be successful in their career search and or in their careers at their respective organizations? What does success look like? How can they be successful?
I would say success looks like being able to not only think of yourself, but think of networking, building this broader knowledge of, I do not know everything, but I can pick people's brains who I see that are doing really well and see if I can add that to my skill sets, my soft skills. Because the biggest thing is getting in front of the leadership team, making yourself present, having a voice, and that enables you to have that seat at the table. So being able to speak up, be able to get into those big meetings, pitch your ideas, and then successfully hit that with a slam dunk because you prepared for that moment will allow you to not only progress in your current career if you're in tech, but then also prepare you for the interview process so then you can hit a home run on that.
Yeah, and when you're successful at networking, I also want to encourage you to have something to show. So build stuff. When you think of stuff, especially if you're on the lower levels, try to always build. If you think of something, try to build it. I have a really great example. Before LinkedIn, I worked as a contractor at Save Mart. It's like Lucky and Foodmax. It's a grocery store chain. And I had an interview with them. And a week prior to that, I was building something just for fun. I was parsing a CSV to be able to add stuff into our inventory management system. And I went there and as I was doing my interview, they asked me something similar. They were like, how can you parse this CSV of grocery items and put it into a database? Like, I couldn't believe what was happening because I literally just solved the same exact problem a week ago. So it's like I stood there and just solved it like right off the bat. So it's like I always encourage you to build stuff. You might not see the value of it immediately, but believe me, you will learn much more than ever following a tutorial or reading or something like that.
Yeah, to piggyback off what Alex just said, like 100%, man, like foundational skills for me are what, kind of sets people apart these days because technology's come so far, things are so abstract, but it's all based on something. So the idea of building things, making sure you have those foundational skills really solidified will definitely help you be more attractive to anyone who would potentially hire you, or even teams that you're currently working for, because they know that you have those base skills solidified, you can solve problems, and being able to demonstrate that will definitely kind of put you on the path of success. A couple other things are like the tools you will need, or being aware of the tools that are out there on the hiring side to like get you to know a company. So things like Crunchbase, we mentioned Ladders in the chat, job sites like Glassdoor and Dice specifically for tech, and then like reputation sites like Blind and Glassdoor for how a company actually treats their employees, because success is defined both by what you make as well as how you live your life, right? So if you think about a company that you could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars at, but you're not happy there, is that really success? So I want you to look at the whole picture when you think about what success is and when you're like going into these hiring decisions basically. And other than that, just be fearless, ask lots of questions. There are loads of us out here who have this lived experience. We all want to give back at this point in our lives, and we'd be happy to answer these questions for you. So definitely reach out and network, like Alex mentioned.
Yeah, honestly, plus 1,000 to everything that Gary, Alex, and Louis said. If I were to add anything, it would really just be reiterating everything they said. So, yeah.
Lastly, I would say don't be afraid to take contract roles, even if it's only for 3 months. You're test driving them, they're test driving you, but it just helps you go through the interview process, do more practice, and it not only builds self-esteem, but then also that level of success, you'll understand what it looks like at certain companies, and you'll internalize what should that be for myself as well. Thank
you all. Here's another question. does your organization work with any programs, mentorship, apprenticeship programs to help Black, Indigenous people of color get into tech?
I would say the short answer there is definitely yes. You can reach out to our recruiters. We have a number of these programs active, actually. I can't list them all off, but they're definitely out there, and that's something we can probably handle in the breakouts. Go ahead, Alex.
And I would also like to plug Rich, though it's not designed just for Black and Brown people, but it really focuses on people that are non-traditionally trained, and those tend to be a lot of Black and Brown people. So the information for application, we're going to hire a new cohort sometime next month. I believe they're going to start the process, and the information is going to be available on next Monday on the 27th. You can go to careers.linkedin.com/reach, and you can see information there on all the roles that are available, the roles I'd mentioned earlier, and just give it a shot. I did just on a whim, and here I am today, so you might be next.
And at ServiceNow, we have a program, actually a team and department called DIBS, or the acronym, because we have an acronym for everything, diversity, inclusion, belonging, which is built into the core of the company, but it also extends out into how we recruit, how we want to help support getting new, fresh talent, people of color into ServiceNow, because we know that talent can be found anywhere, and especially non-traditionally. There's more non-traditional people coming into the industry of tech that is valuable to bring in and harness and be able to mentor. And we're up for the challenge.
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna start pulling a couple of questions from the audience. And what advice would you give to recent grads trying to enter into the industry with no relevant tech experience? And then I'll add a caveat. You know, if you have no experience, similarly, should you still try to negotiate with your employer?
Well, I believe we can always negotiate. Like Gary mentioned, you know, if they want you for the role, at that point, if they want you for the role, there is negotiation possibility, right? Because they understand these days, especially with you know, the lockdown situation, us all working fairly remote, that health and well-being is like top of mind for a lot of folks. So there's different ways you can structure your compensation to make sure you're getting what you need. Say, for example, that their healthcare isn't up to you know, your standards. There's ways that you can adjust that through the compensation side of things to make sure you're getting what you need out of that situation. Now, in terms of like things you should be doing kind of right out of school, Gary touched on like new emerging technologies, kind of staying ahead of the curve. And that's really big because at the end of the day, a lot of these existing companies are eventually going to catch up and start using these newer technologies anyway. And instead of having to train up their existing staff, you know, someone who's fresh out of school, who has a bit more free time than I might have to learn a new language, can get that leg up basically because they put that time in when they had it. So I always think like kind of staying current with what is being used across different industries and what's the emerging technology really helps like set you apart from other folks applying.
Yeah, a couple of things you might do as a new grad. I actually entered the industry as a new grad. But look for companies that have programs tailored towards new grads. They're especially like larger, mid-sized companies. They tend to all have programs that are again tailored towards new grads. So that might be a good place to start. But also, I think when you don't have experience as a new grad, projects become even more important. If you can demonstrate that you have the drive to do the work, and then you're sort of building up the capability to also do the work, that speaks volumes when companies are looking at you as a candidate.
And also, as a new grad, you also try to, when you build stuff, try to make them publicly available and shout about it as much as you can. Like have your GitHub repositories on public, and don't be, I know you might be embarrassed, like, oh, what if my code is bad or something like that. It always helps to have yourself be seen than not. And so that would help. You never know who might be lurking around and they might see you and decide to at least interview you.
Yeah, piggybacking off of Alex, even if you think your code might be bad, you need someone that's going to be able to tell you the truth, which is why I like working with technical recruiters from outside agencies, because as Louis mentioned, there are a lot of mechanisms within companies that filter out people that apply directly, especially if you don't have a whole lot of experience. But what technical recruiters do is they know what these companies are looking for, and they help prepare you based on what they see on your resume. They kind of screen you in terms of these are certain things that you could work on in order to prepare you for the interview that will make you successful either at this company or what the industry is actually looking for.
Thank you. I think that'll segue us to the final question for this portion of the conversation. But in truncated versions, when it's time to apply for jobs, there's a million things to do. Practicing for interviews, projects, refining your resume, researching companies. How do you stay focused, and what would you prioritize to get the most benefit out of your time? And maybe if just two of you can answer this one. Prioritizing for the job search. What did you do?
I guess I can start. I started through my network within itself. And it's funny because Alex at LinkedIn it's a free source that is filled with a wealth of knowledge and a bunch of connections, which are separated by a number of degrees of separation. Whether you work with someone from a different company previously that is somewhere else, there is always mechanisms to get your foot into the door. So networking and asking questions just out of curiosity. Why did you guys choose to use this as your tech stack? And that'll give you more insight into where the industry is going and how you can be relevant.
And also, like they say, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. So not everybody has the opportunity to connect with a lot of people, but thanks to LinkedIn and other social media platforms, you can at least attempt to do that in a fairly easy way. And also, I always stress on have something to show. It's like I take that as the utmost priority, because as an engineer, it all boils down to what you can do. Like, can you deliver and stuff like that? So you always have something to show, because when you make the connections, you gotta show that you're able to do the job, or at least you kind of qualified for it.
Thank you. We got about 2 minutes. I just want to make sure that everyone is taking notes and paying attention. There's a lot there. One thing that they said repeatedly is network, right? Right now, you have access to recruiters who are on the call. You have access to our panelists. You have access to a lot of folks that can help you in your career search. Maybe they're not hiring, but if they know that you're looking for a role, then if they see a role, they can tell you about it. So make sure that you're connected with the people on this call. Make sure that you're sharing LinkedIn, you're adding one another, and you're following up. The follow-up is important. We want to thank you all for being here. We particularly want to thank the San Francisco chapter of National Black MBA, Maisha Robertson, for helping us put this together. She's been the behind-the-scenes person creating all the Zoom. She's going to help us with the breakout rooms that I'll talk about momentarily. They're recruiting for new members. You don't have to have an MBA to join, and she just shared the link in the chat. I want to thank our corporate partners, Chime, Twilio, ServiceNow, and LinkedIn for making this event happen. I want to thank our 4 amazing panelists. Thank you all for sharing your stories, your insights, your advice, and your life and your time with us. We really appreciate it. It's necessary. Again, what they see is what they'll be. And we know that, after seeing you and hearing some of your stories and realizing that there are some folks out there that can probably see themselves in your role. Also want to make sure that everyone knows that 100 Black Men will be having another event next month on Bridging the Gap in Tech. I just shared the link in the chat for you all. And please register for that. It's going to be our last event for the year, our last hiring event. So you don't want to miss it. Feel free to share it out. Lastly, please submit your resume to us no later than next Tuesday, September 28th. If you want us to provide your resumes to our recruiters and partners and hiring managers submitted. An email went out at 11 a.m. today. Another one will go out shortly after this call, give you the opportunity to do so. And at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms, and each of our panelists will have a breakout room of their own. We ask that you stay on so that way you can have a conversation with them in a more intimate setting. You can tell them about your personal situation. You can find out about how they can help you in your career search, and you can network with them. I think it was said on this call, knowing someone within an organization helps. And you know someone, you have access to someone right now. So take advantage. Don't let this opportunity go by. And so as Maisha prepares the breakout rooms, I'm going to put some directions in the chat so that way you can have an idea of how to structure the conversations in the breakout rooms. And so I just put that in the chat. Maisha Robertson is going to send us to the breakout rooms. We'll be there for about 30 minutes or so. Feel free to connect, and you'll have the opportunity to go into different breakout rooms after so long, but use this opportunity. We do this to help you. That's why these events are free. We want to help as many people as possible have as many opportunities that they see fit that they can benefit from. So utilize it. Not everyone gets the opportunity to do this. You're here, take advantage, and we want you here, and we want you to be successful. Thank you all for being here, and now we'll go into the breakout rooms.
So as I get ready to open the breakout rooms, I just want to remind you, if you're trying to leave a breakout room, look for the blue leave breakout room and not the red leave meeting. That way you don't get kicked out and you have to rejoin, okay? All right, so everybody will be pushed to a room with recruiters and our panelists. So enjoy your time.